I think that there is an assault against men discovering their identity. We have become conditioned and programmed to become something other than who we truly are. And we're on a quest to try to find that, but we get frustrated when we can't because we're going to the wrong source.
Hello, everyone. This is Michael Yearby, and you're with us at Unfiltered Conversations. I'm here, joined today by Ronald Zion Roseboro, founder of the Shame-Free Life, trauma-informed coach, author, and voice, helping men tell the truth about shame, silence, identity, and healing. His work sets us up in, the realm of faith, trauma recovery, and real rebuilding, where that all kind of integrates together to make you a holistic human being. I'm glad to have him here for a serious and wonderful conversation. Thanks, Ronald, for being here.
Thank you so much, Michael, for having me.
And I just like to go right into it. You describe to many men are kind of like conditioned, right, to live under an emotional Miranda law. When did you first realize the silence wasn't protecting anyone? And what is it costing us?
Yeah, excellent question. There's so many men that struggle in silence. You see their smile, you see their financial portfolio, the different accomplishments and achievements in life. But for many behind all of that is pretty much of a Band-Aid on a chainsaw cut. And they're bleeding while leading. They're silent, yet struggling. And the emotional Miranda law was basically, I would really have to attribute the revelation to God, because it's no way possible that I could have come up with something that is so profound and so spot on. We understand that the Miranda law is basically a law that we see oftentimes in television episodes, movie episodes, where the police will come up and they have a suspect. Where they'll read their rights. You have the right to remain silent. Every word that you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. And as many men, we have, unbeknownst to us, we have adopted to an emotional Miranda law. We have remained silent, and we have allowed our trauma, our rejection issues, all types of struggles, addictions, imposter syndrome, feeling less than, anger, rage, resentment, bitterness, to literally arrest us. And we have remained silent for years, serving, in many regards, a life sentence. And so when I received that revelation, I said, this is amazing, because there are so many men that fit this bill, because I know I did. And
now,
it's costing
what areas
dearly.
I would say, what areas do you see this primarily affecting men in? Is it their marriages? Is it their finances? Or is it just overall relationships?
Yeah, I think interpersonal relationships. I think regardless of your socioeconomic background, regardless of your color, regardless of your ethnicity, it matters not. I think that for many men that you'll find that they are suffering in silence. It's something about the stereotypical view of counselors, life coaches, therapists that we shy away from. Women oftentimes, when they're having issues, whether it's interpersonal, relational issues, they will vent out, they will talk, whether it's a group of women get together and they talk about it at a wine bar, whether it's a group of women that talk about it at church, or they go see a counselor. But as far as men, we will internalize a lot. And you see them at the bar, you see them at church, you see them on your job. So we oftentimes don't vent. We don't talk because it's viewed as not being masculine to talk about what you're going through. Cream always rises to the top. Cream has the same buoyancy as a life jacket in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And so you can take it down a couple of notches, but pretty soon it's going to float back up. And oftentimes these issues, they float back up in our marriages, our relationships with our children, our community. in the form of road rage, gang violence, just domestic violence, et cetera, et cetera.
So you said that God gave you a revelation. What finally made that silence become unbearable for you? The reason why you're taking this information and spreading it abroad?
Yeah, well, for years, I did not have a sense of identity, and we'll probably unravel it, pre incarceration. Well, before I was physically incarcerated, I was already incarcerated. And one of the things that I marvel, no matter where I go, no matter where I speak, I would just ask with a show of hands, how many people know someone who's been incarcerated? And the hands will slip up in the air. And then I will ask a question, how many of you have been incarcerated? And some hands will slowly slip in the air, bearing the marks of shame. And then I will see no hands at all. And
Mm,
now I will say, I submit to you that everyone in this room have been incarcerated.
mm,
You may not have been inside of a literal jail. You may not have experienced minimum, medium, or maximum security. But if you are emotionally in upheaval, if you have no emotional regulations, you are emotionally incarcerated. If you are tormented by your past and you can't seem to shake it, but you medicate it, you are in a mental stronghold of a prison cell. And so I think that for me, it was coming to a place of self-awareness that I had to find freedom. And I'm not talking about freedom of what people think about me, acceptance, of validation. I went through all of that and it
yeah,
achieved me nothing but bondage. And so I just got to a place where, you know what? The only way that I'm going to achieve freedom, I have to violently, strategically, and radically go
mm,
after it. And so I am still on the journey. Uh,
yeah,
I don't speak to you as one who has reached this pinnacle of ultimate perfection. I am
yeah.
still on the potter's wheel. However, I can look in the rearview mirror and I can see how far I have come and I can see how far God has brought me. And that serves as a testimony.
And eh, and I'm glad you said that because, we're talking about basically us as men, right? The shame that we carry, and we're basically having this mental mind break, in which we're keeping ourselves incarcerated, right? And you're going around the country, you're speaking at so many different events. What is it that a lot of people, when they meet you as a coach, when they meet you as a minister, when they meet you as even a host, a podcast host, what part of Ronald do the people still or tend to miss?
That I'm flesh and blood just like you.
Mm,
I have emotions I feel. Oftentimes I will find myself in a main event in life,
mm,
battling something ancient that I thought that I knocked out in the third round. But here it is again, coming back like Jason in the fifth round. So
yeah,
now, whereas the overhand right worked the first time, now I got to hit you with an uppercut. But I think that just to know that that we're trying to figure this out. And
yeah,
it takes strategy, it takes courage, it takes introspection, it takes self-awareness and self-discovery. But I think some people will tend to think or believe that, hey, I've just hit this plateau and I have no issues whatsoever. That is not so. You will have
mhm,
issues from the cradle to the grave. You will have
yeah,
battles and wrestling matches from the cradle to the grave. But I
yeah.
think that the more wins that we have under our belt, now we have a track record to show that I'm in the fight to win.
And that's truly amazing. In other conversations I've seen that when I was researching you, you said you probably need to take more vacations. And you name like Charleston, the Hilton Head for someone who, sits with like heavy stories that you have. What does rest look like right now for you?
You know, that's a great question. Rest to me is resting my head in my wife's lap.
Mm,
And she's not Delilah. See, for
mhm,
so long, I rested my head in the wrong lap. And so, where I find rest, just quietness, whether it's she and I going away, or if I'm just going away by myself to just recharge. I love the water. Wherever you find an ocean, you'll probably find me not too far away. But think, water and just spending quiet time with my wife, just being able to take off is nothing like being a soldier and you could take off your flash jacket, you can take off your sidearm, you could take off, everything that you have, your helmet, you can take those things off because you are in a comfortable confine that is a non-judgment zone, but it's a place that is a safe haven for you, a refuge. And so I think those are the spaces where I most rest and at the same time recharge.
And what happens to you when you finally get that rest? Like what does it help sharpen?
It sharpens my spiritual discernment. It inflames and ignites my passion. It broadens my territory of wisdom.
Mm,
It increases my self-awareness of self-value that oftentimes the world and various things that we go through will chip away at your self-esteem, your self-image, and your self-value. And so those things are basically embellished during those times.
And it's pretty amazing. Like when I was doing a lot of research about you, I was just looking at this season of your life, right? And how you're doing a lot of coaching, books, you're doing a lot of restoration, clarity sessions, the radio work, right? What feels most urgent to you right now in which you feel like you have to discuss in your mission?
There's an interesting quote by C.S. Lewis. He said that you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. I think that
Mm,
for me, being able to, what is a 911 for me right now? I think that's pretty much what you're saying. It is the utmost important that I reach men to remind them that number one, you have a purpose.
Yeah.
Number two, you have an identity. And the identity, it is not predicated on what you have, but who you are. And you may not even know who you are. I know for years, I had no clue of who I was because I had mastered the art of being an actor on the theatrical stage of public acceptance and validation. So it's very important for me for men to understand that they again have purpose, have identity, and that your life is greater than what you've experienced in your past. Like I liken it to you are the author of your own biography,
Yeah.
okay? Autobiography, and you are responsible to write every chapter. If you stay stuck in chapter 5, when the manuscript says that you have 10 chapters, you have 5 more chapters to cover that you haven't covered and you never will cover because you're stuck in one particular chapter
Yeah.
until you have the courage to turn the page and continue to write. For so many men, they have lost the ink of their identity. So therefore, they cannot continue to write. And so people like myself, I remind them that, wait a minute, you don't have any more ink? Well, I bought you another pen. It's time to start writing again.
Now, do you think a lot of issues, especially that you see in men, is derived or in part with our society, our microwave society? Because now you have the Kevin Samuels, you have the alpha male, you have the beta male type of things that you hear all the time. You hear the women with their outrageous dating, I guess, request for what a man should make, how tall he should be, this, that, and the third. And then it's like it's almost seemed like a war against masculinity in a lot of ways. With you can't use certain words. If you say this, you're, I guess, saucy, in which they say now, saucy, right? And it's kind of weird, right? It's like, do you think, I guess, masculinity in its totality is under attack? And I guess, and why does that feel urgent to you right now?
So masculinity being under attack, think that we have to look at what the definition of masculinity really is, and we have to unpack that. And I know exactly what you're saying. Whether it's social media, whether it is podcasters, etc., that there is a definition of masculinity that does not line up with spiritual and biblical values.
Yep.
Okay. So when I look at what society says masculinity is, it have
Mhm.
nothing to do whatsoever with true masculinity. And I think the
Mhm.
struggle is trying to adhere to a school of thought that is not a God thought. that is not,
Mm.
it lacks spiritual sustenance. And so this is the reason why we go back and forth. And this is the reason why we call men betas, and you got to get your alpha on, and we dog out the man who express his emotions, and we call him beta. But the man who was alpha and does not expose any type of emotions at all, as if he's completely numb to the world, he ends up exploding, and then we wonder why. So I think that there is an assault against men discovering their identity. We
I
have
like that.
become conditioned and programmed to become something other than who we truly are. And we're on a quest to try to find that, but we get frustrated when we can't because we're going to the wrong source.
Mm.
Society doesn't have the answer.
Yeah.
There are many people that are, that's fueling this war between men and women. They don't have the answer. They don't even know who they are. They're not comfortable in their own skin.
Mm.
And so when, the Bible says when the blind follow the blind, they both end up in the ditch. We need proper navigation in order to get to our destination. And we cannot go to a source that is dumb, deaf, and blind and expect to receive any type of help, any type of clarity from a blind man.
I did have a question for you. Like, I see it a lot now that maybe it's just social media, and it's getting popularized even more. Of course, different studies say that men have left the church in rapid succession. Roughly, most churches are 70-30 when it comes to the attendance of churches. 70% mean women, 30% being male and masculine. And because of that, they're saying a lot of I guess, of the preaching and the teachings are now being geared towards women and more social situations in this current time versus what the word of God is saying and how we should, I would say, manner and place ourselves in that viewpoint. What are your take on that?
Yes, you're absolutely right that there is a decline in the male population in many houses of worship, many churches. And we kind of skirt that issue. I'm glad you brought it up of why. And we say, well, there are many say, well, the reason why there's such a decline because men don't want authority. Men are rebellious, et cetera, as opposed to looking at why. I think when we look at the life of Christ, Yeshua, he took 12 men and changed the dynamics of the entire world.
Yes, he did.
Even though that one betrayed him, and if you want to say 11 men, but he turned the entire trajectory of the world back to what true masculinity truly is. And we saw that expressed in the domestic life of Christ. And I'm going somewhere. Whether it was the woman with the issue of blood, whether it was Lazarus, come forth out of your tomb, you've been there for too long, whether it was blind Bartimaeus, whether it was in John chapter 8, the woman who was caught in adultery and was getting ready to be stoned to death, and Christ showed up. And so I think that the gospel is balance. The church is imbalance. Let me say that again. The gospel of Christ is balance. We are the ones that are imbalanced. And if we really look at the dynamics of the church, if we look at who are the givers and the tithers of the church, if we look at really who holds the money bag and the main supporters, they are women. And I thank God, because if the women left the church, churches would shut down. But here's the problem. When we say that we follow Christ and he had a balanced ministry and we're not doing what he's doing, maybe we have to look at ourselves and see that we're not getting the same results as he did. We can get the same results as Christ if we do what he did. He said, greater works you should do because I go away to the Father. Why are we not doing greater works?
It works. Yeah.
When you have a man who was in the congregation and the only time that we speak about men, we talk about how the man is leaving his family, how, woman, I know that you're tired, raising those children all by yourself, but God is going to bless you. God is going to raise you up. And that is true. We do have, men that do not step up to the plate to take care of their seeds. But that is not the telltale of all men.
Mm,
I was one who raised my daughter from 1 year old to 11. So I know that those men do exist. But if we don't share the spotlight on them as we do those who are not doing a man like job in the eyes of God, then I think that we're derelict in our duties. I think that we have an
mhm,
imbalanced gospel. I think that we have a gospel that is ineffective, especially when we are commissioned to make fishers of men. So, and I think that our women will respect us more if we had a
mhm.
balanced gospel. Yeah.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Before the titles and the work and that you've done, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit when you was talking about, your journey and your continued journey, right? What would you say to young Ronald that he believed as what a man should be and what he's supposed to be in this day and age?
What would I tell the younger me?
That young Ronald, like what did he believe a man was, what he was supposed to be, I guess.
Hmm. Hmm. I thought that the man was one who drove a foreign car, gold around his neck, stables of women. Everywhere he goes, people know his name. He's the life of the party. That's what I attributed manhood to. From a young boy who had no blueprint on how to properly build masculinity. Um, you can't name me a general contractor who doesn't build according to a blueprint. If so, then I would question if he's a general contractor, GC at all.
Mhm,
Um, you can't show me a doctor that is going to perform surgery without checking the chart of his patient. So I never had a blueprint. And so I would tell the younger me that you're not here by happenstance. You're not here because you were a mistake in the back seat of your daddy's car. You have purpose. And it is up to you to find out who you are, and I will help you. I will help you. I will
mhm.
help you on your journey of self-discovery. And that's what I would tell the younger me, that don't be so hoodwinked by all of the lights, the sounds and the cameras of of society, because that looks good in public, but the real deal is what happens in private. So get your private life in order.
As you started to grow, who was your mentor that taught you this version of manhood?
So I had several people to cross paths with me. My mother divorced my father when I was 2 years old,
Mm,
and she remarried when I was 7. And so my stepfather was always physically present, but emotionally and mentally. So fortunately for me, because I thought about this a couple of months ago, the question that you're asking me, God would graciously intersect me with men
mm,
who had my best interests at heart, that would always present themselves to be of sterling character. And they really were, not just in
mhm,
public, but also in private. And it was an opportunity for me to glance at something that I had never seen before, to be in the presence of something that I didn't even realize exist. So I think that
mm.
period, and this happened whether I'm working on a job and there's a fellow employee or a manager, but I would always have different seasons where different people would cross my path for a reason, and that was to redirect my attention from mediocrity to manhood.
Wow. And see, I think those people that God put in your life is very pivotal to grow you and give you a distinction between what the world or society is saying a man is and what you see that cause you to I guess have those questions like these two things are not lining up. You once said you had to discover and heal that little boy inside you in that adult man. How was that little boy or who was that little boy and what did he really need that he wasn't getting?
Just a little boy who was just had a huge heart, bigger than life.
Mm,
Always run to the aid of the underdog.
mm,
Very respectful, but just needed guidance on where to go from point A to point B, and to not just tell me, but to show me
Mm,
We were just a few moments ago speaking of Christ. The reason why he had such a balanced ministry again is because he did life with his disciples. He
mhm,
wasn't just on a podium on Sunday morning, and that was the only time that you had access to him. He was there every single day with the disciples, teaching them how
mhm.
to do life. And that's what
Man.
I needed the most.
What would you say was the most, I guess, the most thing that your inner self was afraid of?
I think my inner self was afraid of rejection.
Mm,
Rejection is something that we all have had in time or another. Been, I've always had a fear of being rejected.
yeah,
And so what I would do oftentimes, I would just beat the person to the punch.
yeah,
It's only a matter of time before you reject me. So I'll go ahead and sabotage this now. Or I'll just go ahead and just leave now. Or
yeah.
I'll just create an environment that is so chaotic
Yes.
that you will leave. And so I
Mm,
won't have to say that I left, but you left. That
mhm,
is dysfunctional. That is toxic. And the root of it is fear of rejection. And I think that
mm.
that was something that I struggled with for years.
Me and my wife always talk about like if you're trying to obtain something new or if you're trying to get rid of something old, it's going to cost you.
Mm.
What did that healing of that little self inside you actually require from you?
Honesty,
Mm,
truth. A lot of times, some of the things that we run from. We say that a lot of times that we're honest. I think we're honest to a point,
yeah.
but to really get deep and dig deep, that means you got to get dirt under your fingernails. And that's not a pleasant look, especially when you always want to appear to look clean and one way. And so I had to really unravel, I had to really, underneath so many different layers of the
Mm,
persona, the public image, and then underneath all of that is the real me. Well,
yeah.
in order to reach the real me, the real Ron, I had to endeavor in truth telling
Yeah.
that, okay, I am not the persona. No, that's really not me. The public, person, well, that's really not me at all. But here I am. I'm all the way down here. You can't really find me because I've got like 25 layers, but that's really me. Getting to a place to where whether you like the real me or not is immaterial and irrelevant. That
Mhm.
it took me 25 layers to find the real me, and I'm satisfied.
I found this very true. I started my growth journey a couple of years back because my wife has really been pivotal for my growth, right, and development. I went to school, got my academics, and I noticed that really I wasn't looking for that. It helped give me something, but it didn't give me much. And you stated also that, academia credentials cannot outweigh the reality of living or a lived experience, and you became like your first client. What was the real or the season of your life that forced that truth on you?
I think getting to a place where there's an old cliche where you have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Ty.
I think that whatever we don't work out, we will eventually act out. And
Mm,
it took really just being at the very lowest place emotionally in life and
mm,
seeing the same result year after year after year. But on the outside, it looks like that I'm achieving, but on the inside, I'm really regressing. So again, getting to that place where you just the white flag on your own ego. In other words, I had to allow and I had to come to the understanding of allowing my pride to tap out because it was
mm,
keeping me from winning. Now, pride is a good thing, but I'm talking
yeah.
about unhealthy pride.
Mm,
I'm talking about the pride, I don't need any help. I'm good. I'm talking about the pride, that, I'm a denial. Yeah, it seemed like it's bad, but it's really not that bad. No, it is that bad.
yeah.
Yeah. Unhealthy
Y
pride.
you know, and me and my wife talk about pride. It's like, because people will take what is it, the love of money. People say the love of money is the root of all evil, but it's the love of money, right? And so me and my wife talk about that. And one thing I tell her, I say, I believe just my true, just as going and reading the Bible, that pride is like the root of all iniquity, in which,
Mm.
it comes in because if we're prideful, we can be fearful. but that comes out of pride because, we're fearful about this. So we act, if we're embarrassed because it comes out of our pride, that it's been bruised or our ego, right? And I was wondering for you, what steps or rituals or things that you do to keep your pride or your ego in check, especially as you go and you be this amazing pastor, mentor, teacher, somebody that people really, really look up to.
What keeps pride in check? Paul says something very interesting in the epistles of Corinthians. He says that prayed 3 times that this thorn would be removed from me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there's a lot of theologians that get into a debate as far as what that thorn was or what it looked like. But one thing we do know that it was very troublesome and it was burdensome for Paul.
Yeah.
And this thorn came to him because of the abundance of revelation that the Most High entrusted him with in seeing the third heaven and things that were so unspeakable. He could not even find words to be able to express what he saw because it was completely in a different dimension. We don't have words to accommodate what he saw. This thorn, whatever it was, he prayed and it would not go away. But God said that my grace is sufficient and my strength, not yours, but my strength is made perfect in your weakness. I think for me that it has been a journey of that little boy that always wanted to be accepted, that little boy that always wanted to be approved and validated. It was magnified post incarceration. And
Okay.
so I still looked for that type of approval and to try to prove myself and prove my worth. And you really don't know the deal. Let me try to tell you exactly what happened. And I found myself losing. In other words, the rejection and the pride that was in the background of that, it became my kryptonite. It was draining me of my strength, my vigor, my identity. And so now I am looking at people to accept me when God has already accepted me. If someone reject you, then rejoice. If God has already accepted you. And so I think that um the reality of my need for God on a moment by moment basis, because of everything that I've had to experience and everything that I've gone through, is like a thorn in my flesh. But it turns my attention now to the one who said that I knew you before I formed you in your mother's belly, just like Jeremiah. At Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to do evil to you, even though that evil has come to you, but to bring you to an expected end and a future. So even though that's a thorn of my past, it keeps me somewhat in check, but
Yes.
it instead of it now uh pulling me to now explain myself and try to get into good graces of people, I turn my face to God, who is the source of my strength and who is the author and father of my identity.
Yep. No, you're right. It's amazing when you use words like shame, trauma, guilt, pain. What distinctions matter to you most? And where do most people often confuse those things?
Yeah, so guilt means that I've done wrong. Shame means that I am wrong.
Oof.
And shame is something that is an internal voice, it's an internal mechanism. I liken
Mm,
shame unto an OS, an operating system that plays in the background of your life constantly.
mm,
And it reminds you of your shortcomings. It reminds you of your failures. It
mhm.
reminds you that you are defeated. It reminds you of any and everything that is negative, hoping that you would come into agreement with it. And even the Bible says in Amos 3:3, can two walk together except they are in agreement? I'm not going to a strip club because I'm not in agreement with that.
Yes,
And if I had a friend who did go to a strip club, I wouldn't go with him because I'm not in agreement with
agree
him
with that.
or that. And so, but shame, it plays in the background, and if it's not checked, if it's not exposed, if we don't put in a viral software a software to uproot it out of the system, then
Yeah.
we will not only believe the shame, but we will become shame. Shame on 2 feet. Shame that drives a nice car. Shame that has a nice job.
And what do you think, I guess, those distinctions, which one do you think that men hide behind the most? Is it the shame? Is it the trauma? Is it the guilt? Is it the pain?
So I think that when we talk about trauma, one of the first things that we think about is PTSD. Okay, well then the first thing we think about is someone who served a couple of tours. Or we think about someone who was in a car accident and they have TBI, traumatic
Yeah.
brain injury. But we don't talk about the trauma that the little boy suffered in a household of trauma and now
Mm.
carries with him in his adult years. So I think it's twofold. I think that there are many men who struggle with shame. And the trauma and trauma can also be manifested in grief, having a massive loss in your life that in itself can be traumatic. And so I think that we struggle, yes, with shame, absolutely, and we try to medicate it in so many different ways. There's only but so many Jack
Yeah.
Daniels and Cavassier and Hennessy that you can drink to
Yeah.
silence shame, because that
Yeah.
voice is loud. And certainly trauma, but trauma is always, like I said, it hides and we have to expose it.
So this is my final question to you as we begin to wrap up. What is something you wish more people understood about you and your work that almost nobody ask about you?
I think that I really and truly believe in the power of redemption.
Mhm.
I don't, when I think of there's so many men that feel unredeemed. I have done too much. I'm on my second or my third marriage. I was addicted to coke, went to rehab, went to prison. Just all types of shame-based issues that you are still redeemable. You're still redeemable and you're still valuable. And I think that is something that I would like people to know the most about me, that when you hear my name, when you
Mhm.
see my face, there should be a bold neon light that says redemption, redemption, and the power of it.
Well, Ronald, thank you so much
Thank you.
for being on the show. The floor is yours. Tell us what you have going on.
Yeah, well, as you heard in the background, all this tumbling of books falling. So I have I have a program called the BRIC method, and it's the acronym of Breakthrough, Resilience,
Mhm.
Identity, Clarity, and Kickstart. I basically just take people through this program to be able to identify. Are you carrying around a lot of bricks? Just
Mhm.
picture, you're in the midst of a hurricane, and it is fierce. From that
Mhm.
hurricane, an F5 tornado spins from that
Mhm.
and levels your house and the community. And so the house that you spent so many years, so many resources and building and expanding, now it is ruined and you're ground zero and you're looking at nothing but the ruins of what was. And so now you can even you have two choices. You can take those bricks and carry them around with you, or we can build something. We can start
Mhm.
all over again. And that's basically what um what the brick method is. And
The brick method.
the brick method. And I have Samson Restored. It's a book that I wrote several years ago, and I revisited that book to re-edit it. It's called Is There a Samson in You?
Mm.
And this book
Mm.
it speaks of the life of Samson. I draw a
Yeah.
parallel between the life of Samson and the life of us as men today. Samson, he was 40 years old when he died, and he was called to be a deliverer, but he spent 40 years trying to deliver himself instead of the people that he was assigned to, which is the
Mhm.
Israelites. And how often have we spent so many years wrestling with the same old thing, in our heads in the
Mhm.
same old Delilah's lap over and over again, when God has so much for us? Samson
Mhm.
Restored is basically a men's group. And you can go to my website for all of this information, theshamefreelife.com, theshamefreelife.com, and sign up for Samson Restored. It's a support program. It's a support mechanism. It's a system of support just to remind you of who you are. If you don't know, then we're going to walk you through the process of discovering who you are because you probably don't know. It's hidden under so many different layers of what you thought was you. And
Mhm.
so that's pretty much what I do, what I'm passionate about. And again, all this information you can find at theshamefreelife.com.
Thank you again, Ronald, for just everything. This wasn't just a conversation about men's pain, it was a conversation about truth, rebuilding, and what healing really asks for us as people. I'm grateful for your honesty. I'm grateful for your work that you do, and I appreciate all that you do and just coming on the show. So have a wonderful day.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
man.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike.